Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Richard Brandon. I work at a company called Edgeware, a Stockholm-based tech company, and I'm going to spend the next 20, 30 minutes talking about TV delivery, and specifically using content delivery networks to deliver TV over OTT, IPTV, and really a key decision which we think a lot of the people we work are trying to take at the moment, which is whether they should buy CDN as a service from an Akamai or Level 3 or Limelight or one of the other CDN providers, or whether they should build their own CDN. And it did occur to me coming to this town and inevitably staying in a casino, which seems, I don't know if it's possible to come to Las Vegas and not stay in a casino. I've never managed it. But it seems like you have to stay in a casino. And one thing that struck me about casinos is that they do very well at making a lot of money. And ultimately, that source of that money is because they've built the infrastructure that everybody comes to transact on. And it's not such a different argument really when we think about CDNs. You can either keep spending your money, you can keep going to the table, and you can keep putting your money down and spending your money with Akamai or others, or you can end up building your own infrastructure. So I would start off by thinking about what we're really trying to achieve with this infrastructure. What are we trying to do when we want to build out a TV delivery network? And what on earth do I mean when I say amazing TV? Well, really I mean three different things, I suppose. The first one is TV that's just exactly what you want it to be, where you want it to be. So watching TV on the device you want to watch whenever you want to watch it. And we've got pretty used to that. We've got used to that really in no time at all. In the last 2 or 3 years, viewers expect their TV to be available to them on whatever device, whenever they want to watch it. But the next thing that I think we've seen happen over the last year or two is around the sense of reality of that TV, the quality. Interesting, I live in the UK, and the incumbent broadcaster there, the BBC, has actually launched their 4K television content on their online service. So if you want to get the best possible BBC content you don't watch it over satellite or over terrestrial, you watch it over online. So we're seeing that with 4K, we're seeing that with some of our customers experimenting with 360-degree video and virtual reality. And where's that going to go next? Well, it's going to get into even greater personalization. So the viewers watching camera angles which are virtualized, which don't even really exist. Viewers selecting the particular camera they want to view from, or watching more than one experience at the same time. And so we've seen a massive shift in the last few years in our expectation of TV. And when it comes to delivering it, when it comes to the plumbing, essentially, of delivering all of this television over OTT and over IP, that's something we've got to build a CDN to enable us to do. So what problem are we really solving here? Well, what we're solving here is a world that's gone from broadcast. It's gone from, even when we started with IPTV, we talked about multicasting. It was still really a broadcast technology. We're sending one show out into the world, whether that's over a satellite, whether that's over an IP stream, and everybody's tuning into that same stream. And that's simply not the case anymore. It's not the case the moment we want to watch at a different time to anybody else. It's not the case the moment we want to watch in a different format because it's a different device. It's not the case if we want to watch from a different camera angle. So we've shifted at a network level from a world where we're sending a multicast traffic, broadcast traffic, to unicast traffic. And I actually spent most of my career before getting into the TV business in the networking business. And we didn't build the internet with this kind of scale in mind. It simply doesn't work. And that's what we use a CDN for. We use a CDN to solve this problem of scale. So just in case there's some of you are sitting out there going, I don't really know what one is. So here's the the 30-second lesson on what is a CDN? Well, we've got content. We've got some content there on the left of the screen, and we've got some screens and viewers on the right-hand side of the screen. And inside of that, we've got a real network. We might just think of the internet as a cloud, but like most things that we draw on the diagram, if we draw a cloud, really we might as well say, I don't quite know what happens in here. That's tend to what we mean by a cloud. So the internet isn't just a cloud, it's a lot of real switches and routers and network connections, and they are going to get swamped with that traffic. So what a CDN does, well, it takes that request that comes from the client and the viewer, and that request comes into your center, your data center, your origin location, but rather than playing everything back from that origin location across the whole network and having this scale problem, we distribute out that content. So the CDN pushes that content out towards the edge, and nearer the network edge, closer to the viewer somewhere, you keep a copy of most of your popular content. You cache that content, essentially. So then you only have to send this content once across the network. Not hundreds of times, not tens of thousands of times, but just once across the network. You distribute the storage and you distribute the playback, and that means you can scale to deliver this brilliant television that we all can experience now across the same internet or private network, if it's your own network, if you're a telco or a cable operator. So that really brings us to the choice that we're facing here, and the choice that I wanted to discuss, which is that CDN structure would apply whether you're in an Akamai service or whether you've built your own solution. So why might you go to a general purpose CDN provider and buy a service? Well, particularly if you're in service startup mode, if you've got a few viewers, if you've got hundreds, thousands of viewers but no more, that's an excellent answer to solve your problem. You pay as you go, you've got no capital, you've got no risk. It's a good answer. Second reason you might do that is if you've got low density of viewers. So if your viewers maybe you've got tens of thousands of viewers, but they're spread all over the world, again, going to a global CDN service is a pretty good answer to satisfy that demand. Or you're trying to reach some viewers that are outside of your footprint. You've got a natural viewing footprint, but you've got a few viewers that fall outside that. So that's a good answer. So why might you build your own? Well, conversely, because you've got a high number of subscribers, a high number of viewers, you want some economy of scale. And you want to get that economy of scale at a cost point that's starting to pay back for you, and I'll talk a little bit more about that cost point later. Second reason is control of quality. So if you're trying to reduce the buffering your viewers experience, if you're doing live sports and you're trying to reduce the latency down from 30, 40 seconds to 5 seconds, then you can do that with your own purpose-built network. And I mentioned here a paper that came out from Frost & Sullivan in February, and there's a few copies actually. If anyone wants a copy of that report, they can pick one up on our stand, which is about 14 miles that way. It's a big hall, isn't it? It's about, it's just against the back wall. Follow the back wall down, you'll see an Edgeware stand eventually. And we've got a few copies of that report. It's quite good. And they recognize very early that the cost of owning your own CDN starts to look more attractive as your volume grows. So it's really a volume play, and there is a break point at which it makes sense to build your own. And I guess the most obvious endorsement of that is Netflix. So if any of you are familiar with the way Netflix have deploy and deliver their technology, they've built around, I think they have around 1,600 servers that they've spread around the world. And those servers keep copies of the most popular content in the Netflix library, if not all the Netflix library, and they stream those out locally. So we would strongly agree that that is a good way to scale your TV delivery. But if you're not as big as Netflix and you don't have the resources that they do, the question is, does it still make sense? And so that's really what I wanted to talk about next. So the way we would look at this as an architecture and the way we consider the different elements is to break out what functions do we need to deliver within this TV CDN, a CDN specifically for TV. And that's quite an important point, because if you go to a CDN service provider, these networks have to provide Apple operating system updates. They have to provide Microsoft Windows updates. They're a general purpose service, and they have to do things like that. And that puts various constraints on the way that they're operated and they're run, that if you're a TV provider, you shouldn't really have to worry about. I was listening to a big broadcaster saying that their CDN service worked very well unless there was an Apple iOS update, in which case their TV service fell over. And that's not really very acceptable, I don't think. I don't think their viewers would think so either. So we think about the different functions of the CDN, and some of these functions are content related, so they're really origin functions. They're about ingesting VOD content, turning it into a library of live TV to VOD. They're around publishing that content. And then there's a set of functions which are really more network-like, selecting which CDN you might even put this over. So maybe you're still using a public CDN service for overflow. The request routing function is very fundamental to a CDN. So this is the function that actually understands whether there's a copy nearer to you as a viewer and which server it is. And then there's the kind of heavy lifting of the CDN, the delivery layer, the repackaging, where we're taking that common format and putting it into the right format for the device, the actual copy, caching, the streaming, and all these things scale quite differently. So the content layer is really around assets, and you need to scale to assets. It's something that runs very well in cloud IT infrastructure. Actually, same time as I'm speaking down here, we've got a presentation we're doing down with Dell EMC on the storage side, pretty much underneath where I'm standing, where the coming together of storage and CDN technology is really critical. So that's the content layer, and it's, as I say, it's really scaling about how much content you have, how many channels have you got, how many assets have you got. Works very well on IT. The network layer is really all about numbers of transactions. So how many of these tiny transactions are you having to support? Again, that works very well in a cloud IT environment. But the delivery layer is something that's a little unique. It's really scaled by the number of users you have to support. And as such, it's the one thing that you really need to distribute. You can't centralize that delivery layer and get an economy of scale and get good quality of experience. So I mentioned some of these are sort of thought of as origin functions that you sit in the center. One thing that we think is really critical about owning your own delivery infrastructure is that you can distribute some of these functions that you think of as origin. So you can distribute things like the repackaging. Now, repackaging, if you're not familiar, is the part of the process that takes your encoded video and puts it into the right format for your client. So different types of clients want different types of formats, HLS, MSS, Dash. If you conventionally, you do that in your origin, then for every client type you're supporting, you have to keep a copy of that same piece of content in different formats. And then you have to store that in your cache in different formats. And you have to send it out across a network to that cache. If you own that network, you're consuming your own backhaul transport. If you're buying that service in, that's even more expensive. So if we repackage that at the edge of our network, we only have to send that out in a single format. So we can send that out in a single common file format and then repackage on the fly depending on the client that wants to see it. So now we've taken down the amount of backhaul capacity by a factor of 3 maybe, if you've got 3 different client formats. We've taken down the amount of storage in the cache by a factor of 3. So now our cache actually is essentially 3 times bigger than it was. So that means you can get a significantly better cache hit ratio. So when you're looking for saying, is that popular, is that content I'm looking for popular enough, that cache is now bigger and bigger to be able to support it. All of which is driving down buffering, driving up the quality of experience. Another decision that people will make here is, well, okay, if I start thinking about building my own, should I do that in hardware? Should I do that in software? And I guess the answer here is it depends. It depends where that location, where your equipment's located. We offer both, so we're not biased on this one. We'll offer a solution in pure software, and we offer a purpose-built piece of silicon in an appliance. There's more flexibility, putting it on standard COTS-based IT, but there's some downsides in terms of power and performance that you normally have as an overhead compared to a dedicated appliance. A dedicated appliance would look something like this. Apologies for me showing our own box, but it's lovely. It's a lovely box. And just in terms of scale here, something like this, which is 1 rack unit high, would be able to support 20 or 80 gig of streaming, and you could keep the entire Netflix catalog in HD in a device like this. So we have customers that have over 100 of these deployed around the country, each with huge amounts of content cached. And so, of course, the quality of experience coming from those is immensely better compared to just running off a standard CDN service. So let's take a few minutes and kind of close up thinking about, well, what does that mean in terms of experience? And it means a few things. Firstly, financial. So the finances change from an OpEx model, and this is based on a particular customer model we did, where you've got a consistent monthly cost for your CDN service. There's no growth in this model, by the way. This just assumes a flat delivery of content every month. Cumulative cost, of course, is linear for a CDN service, compared to building your own CDN, where you've got an upfront investment. You've got to buy equipment, you've got to buy software licenses, you've got to pay for some integration work, some installation. But then your ongoing monthly costs are far less. You've got some backhaul costs, you've got the fulfillment operations people. And at some point that line's going to cross. And really, I suppose the one offer I'd to put, if you're not sure if you're in a world where that line might cross or not, come and have a chat with us. We'll soon tell you if we think that might be suitable for you or not. So that scale and that ability to scale more cost effectively is a really important reason. The second is around performance. And this is in probably 2 different categories. So performance in terms of buffering, reducing the amount of buffering because you're not sending this content over the whole internet or even over quite a lot of the internet. You're sending it over as short a distance as possible. And the more you can distribute your content, the more you will drive down buffering. And the second one in terms of delay and latency, especially for live sports. We're speaking with more and more people now. Sports content, as you know, tends to be extremely expensive, it's extremely valuable, and increasingly viewers are frustrated by the 30, 40-second delay that they're seeing with their online sports coverage compared to watching on a satellite, and they're being interrupted by social media, by tweets, by comments from their friends, by texts, where they've seen a significant event happen in the match before the viewer. And the third one, which is sort of important, is around insight, actually understanding more about what your viewers are doing. If you understand the delivery channel, you can understand if somebody stopped watching because it was the moment they switched from Wi-Fi to 4G. You can understand whether that was the point where they had packet loss on the delivery, might be the point where they stopped watching that program. You can integrate that with your customer service desk. You can integrate it with a rebate system. So you can get far more analytics and unique set of analytics out of understanding the delivery path as well as the viewing experience. I'm just going to finish with a couple of things. Firstly, I mentioned that Frost & Sullivan report. Once again, you can pick up a copy. I think we've got a handful of copies, but please come by and pick one up if you want one. They ended up concluding that there was a list of things you should look at to consider buying your own, and I thought I'd just lift it straight out of their report. And they said if you can answer yes to a couple of these questions, you should probably be evaluating self-build for a CDN. So firstly, have you got more than 50,000 subscribers? If you have, you should really be looking at your own CDN. Is your traffic volume predictable? And actually really, I'm going to rephrase that on their behalf. It's not so much that it's predictable, it's that is that people are consistently watching television on your service. If you only broadcast one football match every week, then use Akamai. It's the right tool for the job. If you're broadcasting to your viewers every night and they're watching 2 or 3 hours of television every night, then you should consider building your own CDN. If your audience is within the same geography, if they're in one country as opposed to spread regionally, you should consider building your own. Obviously, CDN prices vary. There are some markets, we've got some customers in markets where CDN prices are much, much higher than, say, here in North America. That's another reason to look at it. And then last but not least is quality. We talked about the lack of buffering and about the delay, but of course as everybody's moving to HD and to 4K, that quality argument's going to get higher and higher. And if you're spending $1 today pushing HD out on your CDN service, you will be spending $4 for the same content on HD, because it's literally 4 times as many bytes that you're paying to be delivered. So we've probably built about, I know, a little over 100 of these things so far for people. Some of them are big players you might expect with millions of subscribers, some of them much smaller for some of the other reasons we mentioned. I'm going to stop there. We've got some time for questions if there are any from the floor. Otherwise, I'll be hanging around here for a few minutes. If you want to come and see us at the show, we'd love to see you. We're on the back wall, about halfway down. Other than that, I've been Richard Brandon from Edgeware, and thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.